I'm gonna do it by myself. He was a really good guy. Everybody loved George. Everybody. I just need for my children. As a mom, begged when I called 911, I begged them not to turn sirens on because I didn't want my kids to see him.
He said he's been shot.
In the town of Buford in Gwinnett County, Georgia, life passed at the gentle rhythm characteristic of American suburbia. In late 2017, the Montauk Hill Drive neighborhood was home to two-story houses with gray roofs, neatly trimmed green lawns, and middle-class families. Among them was the family of George Young, a 43-year-old man. George Young was a typical family patriarch. Standing 5 feet 10 inches tall with a sturdy build of around 180 pounds, George worked as a manager for a private security company. The nature of his job required him to frequently work late-night shifts. Living with George in the house was his wife, 42-year-old Tia Young, a homemaker who took care of the home and the children. Life in the house on Montauk Hill Drive already had its share of everyday financial pressure. Things began to change when a new element appeared under this roof: 28-year-old Harvey Timothy Lee. Lee was a longtime close friend of George. When Lee fell into unemployment, homelessness, and severe financial crisis, George took the initiative to bring this younger friend to live with his family. He arranged work for him and did not charge a single penny in rent. By mid-November 2017, that two-story house was home to a husband working constant night shifts, a homemaker wife, and a taken-in close friend. The cozy family scene in the peaceful suburb appeared completely normal to the surrounding neighbors. Hiding under the guise of a happy family, the illicit relationship between Tia Young and Harvey Lee quickly turned into a cruel conspiracy. The motive of the two did not stop at betrayal, but was also directed toward George Young's $1 million life insurance policy. For the plan to succeed, preparations were carried out cold-bloodedly and meticulously from weeks prior. Tia Young spent money to buy a compact GPS tracking device. The two secretly attached this device under the frame of George's SUV, allowing them to closely monitor his every movement and arrival time on a phone app. As a result, the victim's travel schedule after his night shifts was completely controlled. On the afternoon of November 16, 2017, George left home for the security company to work his evening shift. Right after he left, Tia took action to completely disconnect the power source of the home's security camera system, preparing a perfect blind spot for the crime scene. Throughout that night, Tia and Lee continuously checked the GPS signal, patiently waiting for George's car to return. Late night turned into the early morning hours of November 17, and the app signaled that George's SUV had entered the Montauk Hill Drive neighborhood. Immediately, Harvey Lee, handgun in hand, quietly stepped out onto the porch and slipped into the shadows to hide. Just a few minutes later, George parked his car in the driveway and walked tiredly up the steps leading to the front door. Right as he reached out his hand to insert the key into the lock, Lee suddenly stepped out from the dark corner at point-blank range. Without a single word of warning, 2 sharp gunshots shattered the dark night. 2 bullets embedded straight into George's body, knocking the 43-year-old man down onto the porch floor. The house key remained stuck in the lock as the victim lay collapsed in a pool of blood. Right after the sharp gunshots shattered the quiet of the neighborhood, everything quickly sank into silence. However, instead of shouting for help or immediately assisting the victim, Tia Young deliberately delayed for about 5 to 10 minutes before picking up the phone to call 911 emergency services. In the emergency call, Tia displayed a panicked attitude, crying as she reported to the 911 dispatcher that her husband, Mr. George Young, had been attacked and had collapsed right in front of the house. She repeatedly urged emergency forces to arrive immediately because the wound was bleeding heavily. If you find the content good and meaningful, please press subscribe, turn on notification bells, and like the video to support the channel. At the same time, Harvey Lee stepped out onto the porch and began performing cardiopulmonary resuscitation, CPR, chest compressions on George's motionless body. The sound of friction and the rapid heartbeat sounds during the emergency call alerted several residents living in neighboring houses. A few curious neighbors peeked out their doors, horrified to realize the chaotic scene taking place right on the porch steps of the Young family home. Just a few minutes after the emergency call, patrol cars from the Gwinnett County Police Department, along with EMS emergency forces, rushed with sirens blaring to the scene on Montauk Hill Drive. Accompanying the night patrol unit that evening was a camera crew from the true crime reality television show The First 48, recording every moment of the authorities' initial approach. Patrol officers quickly set up protective perimeters, strung warning tape, and entered the porch area. Medical personnel urgently checked the victim's vital signs, but quickly determined that George Young had already died earlier due to injuries that were too severe. Right at the time of approach, patrol officers and detectives noted many unusual details that went far beyond an ordinary crime. The victim had collapsed right on the threshold with the key cluster still inserted in the main lock. Personal property on George's person, including his wallet and expensive phone, was completely undisturbed and not taken. In particular, the attitudes of the two people present in the house, Tia Young and Harvey Lee, caught the attention of experienced officers. Even though their loved one had just been shot down right in front of them, their panic appeared unnatural, and there was stiffness in how they expressed themselves to the police. Realizing this was not a simple botched robbery, detectives immediately cordoned off the entire area to wait for the crime scene unit to arrive and work. Scene examination was carried out by the Crime Scene Unit, CSI, right during the night under the strict supervision of detectives. In the porch area, technicians recovered 2 handgun shell casings. The location where the shell casings fell, along with the shooting direction, showed that the killer stood at very close range, only a few feet away from the victim when firing the gun. When inspecting the home security system, the CSI team discovered an important technical detail. The power plug for the surveillance camera system had been pulled from the electrical outlet prior to the incident. All recorded data at the fateful moment was completely blank. The forensic report from the medical examiner's office stated that George Young's cause of death was severe penetrating trauma from 2 gunshot wounds to the head and chest area. The estimated time of death was determined to match the time the gunshots were recorded, before dawn on November 17. Marks on the body showed that the bullets were fired at point-blank range, causing the victim to collapse immediately without any signs of struggle or self-defense. From the physical evidence gathered at the scene, detectives with the Gwinnett County Police Department immediately eliminated the hypothesis that this was a spontaneous robbery or a random attack. The fact that the victim was ambushed at point-blank range, no property was missing, combined with the fact that the security camera system was actively unplugged beforehand, pointed to a single possibility. This was a crime meticulously planned from the inside. The direction of the investigation quickly focused on reviewing all personal relationships, financial conflicts, and internal living dynamics of the Young family. Detectives began analyzing telecommunications history, checking financial data, and conducting a series of separate interviews for the last 2 people who saw the victim, his wife Tia Young and close friend Harvey Lee. During initial questioning, detectives discovered many contradictions in the statements of the 2 subjects. Although both asserted that only a pure friendship existed between them and that they lived together to help each other, extracting personal phone data presented a completely opposite reality. Police discovered a series of messages with illicit affair content being continuously exchanged between Tia Young and Harvey Lee right behind George's back. Suspicion grew even further as detectives dug into the victim's financial records. A $1 million life insurance policy under George Young's name was discovered, in which Tia Young was the sole beneficiary if her husband died. Right after George's death, investigative notes showed that steps had been taken to inquire about claims procedures for compensation from this policy. Breakthrough evidence appeared when the digital investigation team inspected the victim's vehicle. Underneath the frame of George's SUV, police discovered a compact GPS tracking device secretly attached to the chassis. Tracing the device ID and purchase transaction history, police determined the payment account led straight to Tia Young and Harvey Lee. Data from this tracking device showed that George's entire movement schedule, shift clock out time, and route home on the night of the crime were updated in real time to the 2 subjects' phones. Every clue from bullet marks, the GPS device, insurance money flow, to the illicit relationship had now converged on one point. At this moment, all eyes were turned toward one person. After 5 months of quietly gathering and completing the digital evidence chain, in April 2018, the Gwinnett County Police officially received an arrest warrant from the court. Throughout this time, the two suspects still lived under the same roof. Tia Young even publicly posted appeals for funeral money donations on social media. On the morning of April 10, 2018, police forces and the investigation team suddenly closed in on the house on Montauk Hill Drive. The arrest warrant was executed simultaneously for Tia Young and Harvey Timothy Lee on the spot. When law enforcement surrounded and read the arrest warrant, both suspects displayed shock but did not exhibit any resisted behavior or attempt to escape. Tia Young appeared cold, silently putting her hands into handcuffs, while Harvey Lee silently complied with all orders from the officers on duty. Both were immediately led away from the neighborhood in 2 separate patrol cars, heading straight toward the Gwinnett County Jail to serve prosecution procedures. In 2 separate interrogation rooms of the Gwinnett County Police, the intense psychological battle officially began. Both Tia Young and Harvey Lee chose the strategy of obstinately denying guilt, stubbornly denying all family conflicts or connection to George's death. Faced with the evasive attitude of the suspects, detectives applied divide and conquer tactics and presented each piece of evidence in increasing stages. Initially, Tia Young maintained a calm demeanor, repeatedly asserting she was sleeping when the gunshots went off and assuming that her close friend Harvey Lee was merely a victim who was dirtily suspected. However, the interrogation tempo completely shifted when the detective placed detailed printouts of the messaging history of their romantic relationship on the desk, along with GPS tracking device purchase records. Faced with undeniable digital data, Harvey Lee's fake composure began to crack. When the detective frankly presented the SUV's movement timeline matching minute by minute with the time the killer ambushed, Lee began to falter, his statements becoming contradictory and broken off. Realizing Lee's psychological state had collapsed, police increased the mind game pressure. "We know exactly who pulled the trigger and who was behind pulling the strings. The evidence is complete. The only remaining question is, who will be the person to speak the truth first?" Although Tia Young remained resolute in keeping silent and denying all accusations, Harvey Lee's panic led to a major turning point. He accidentally let slip details about the location where the murder weapon was hidden in a brush area a few hundred yards from the house. After Tia Young and Harvey Lee became the 2 defendants, the task of investigators and the Gwinnett County District Attorney's Office was to turn individual clues into a case file that could stand strong before a court. This was not a case dependent on a single piece of evidence. Its weight lay in how multiple independent layers of evidence connected with one another. First was physical evidence at Montauk Hill Drive. The location George was found, the condition of the front door area, and the marks recorded by the crime scene unit helped investigators reconstruct his final moments at the house. Next was digital evidence. The GPS device connected to George's vehicle became a particularly important part. Data from the device and related records allowed investigators to examine how George's travel schedule was tracked before he died. Prosecutors also had communications and phone data helping prove the nature of the relationship between Tia and Lee. When placing these records next to the case timeline, they provided prosecution with another layer of circumstantial evidence to prove the connection between the 2 defendants. The financial factor was also brought into the file. George had a life insurance policy worth about $1 million from Mutual of Omaha. This insurance payout provided prosecutors with a potential financial motive when considered alongside the remaining evidence. In addition to physical, digital, and financial evidence, the file was also strengthened by testimony from people who could confirm George's final schedule and related events. By June 27, 2018, prosecutors presented the case before a Gwinnett County grand jury. The grand jury returned an indictment, officially indicting Tia Young and Harvey Lee on felony charges related to George's death. From that moment, the focus was no longer whether the case would be brought to court. On March 25, 2019, Nearly a year after Tia Young and Harvey Lee were arrested, the case entered its decisive phase at Gwinnett County Superior Court. This time, what investigators had spent months collecting was no longer sitting inside an investigative file. They were presented before a jury, where prosecutors had to prove the criminal liability of the two defendants beyond a reasonable doubt. The trial lasted nearly 2 weeks. Before the jury, the prosecution presented George Young's death not as the result of a random attack. The state's argument focused on proving that Tia and Lee were both connected to the chain of events leading to George's death. Instead of relying on a single witness who could recount the entire incident, prosecutors built the case from multiple pieces of evidence and asked the jury to view them as links in the same chain. The defense side went in the opposite direction. Defense attorneys placed emphasis on the very standard the prosecution was required to overcome: reasonable doubt. Circumstantial evidence, even if creating suspicion, still had to be strong enough to prove the elements of each criminal charge. The jury was not permitted to convict simply because a detail seemed suspicious or because a defendant acted in a way that made them suspicious. After both sides completed presentations and closing arguments, the decision-making authority transferred to the jury. On April 5, 2019, the verdict was announced. Harvey Lee was declared guilty of malice murder. For Tia Young, the result had an important legal distinction. The jury declared her not guilty of malice murder, but guilty of felony murder, aggravated assault, and 2 counts of attempted tampering with evidence. 10 days later, on April 15, the two returned to the courtroom to receive sentencing. Harvey Lee received life imprisonment without the possibility of parole for the conviction on malice murder. Tia Young received life imprisonment with the possibility of parole for felony murder, along with a consecutive total of 3 years in prison for the convictions on attempted tampering with evidence. That was the conclusion of the trial court level, both brought before a jury for George Young's death, but Tia Young and Harvey Lee left the courtroom with different convictions and sentence severity. For Harvey Lee, the sentence meant life without parole. For Tia Young, it was life with the possibility of parole, plus 3 consecutive years in prison. The verdict of the Gwinnett County Superior Court quickly attracted major attention from local public opinion and national media. Residents in the town of Buford could not help but be shocked at the cruelty of the case, where an act of shelter filled with kindness was met with a betrayal so bitter that it cost a life. While public opinion mostly agreed with the life sentence without parole given to Harvey Lee, the verdict given to Tia Young sparked some conflicting debates. A segment of the public argued that Tia Young receiving a sentence with an opportunity for parole consideration after 30 years was too light compared to her role as the mastermind pulling strings behind the curtain. Regarding the victim's family, George Young's relatives expressed relief that justice had finally been served. Even so, the comfort from the sentence still could not fill the immense void left behind by the father and family patriarch. The case closed with 2 life sentences for the perpetrators, but questions from legal and moral perspectives remain. A person who directly pulled the trigger received life without opportunity for parole, while the mastermind pulling strings stands before the opportunity to be considered for parole after 30 years in prison. In your opinion, were the sentences for Tia Young and Harvey Lee truly proportionate to the crime and betrayal they caused? What detail in this case made you reflect the most? Please leave your thoughts in the comments section below. The murder case of George Young comes to an end, leaving behind a deep void and a costly lesson about the complex nature of human beings and the dark corners right under one's roof. It is a quiet warning about the blindness of greed and the corruption of morality. George Young fell not at the hands of a stranger on the street, but by his wife of many years and the closest friend he once opened his arms to shelter during hardship. Kindness placed in the wrong spot or lacking awareness can inadvertently become fertile ground for covetousness and betrayal. When the boundary between altruism and exploitation is erased, the price to pay is sometimes life itself. From another perspective, the case shows that the most tragic tragedies often do not erupt from spontaneous conflicts, but are kindled from silent fractures and greed accumulated over time. Cold-blooded calculation, From attaching tracking devices, disconnecting cameras, to staging a fake crime scene, reflects a twisted criminal psychology, disregarding another person's life to trade for short-term financial gain. But judicial history always proves a harsh reality. No perfect plan can cover up the truth before digital footprints and the scrutiny of the law. The greatest ultimate fallout is not merely the life sentences for the perpetrators, but the permanent, unhealable wound for the children. They must grow up in the dark shadow of a double tragedy, losing a devoted father while carrying the pain from the betrayal of their own biological mother. Every mistake stemming from greed and betrayal leads to an irrecoverable conclusion. Once moral boundaries are crossed, the price to pay will always far exceed all initial calculations. If you found this video helpful, please press the channel subscribe button and click the bell icon next to it so you don't miss any attractive case files published weekly. Don't forget to like, share this video, and leave a comment with your perspective right below. Goodbye, and see you again in the upcoming cases.